many years, we've travelled the world making wildlife programmes for the BBC.
What an amazing animal. My name's Chris Packham.
I'm Liz Bonnen.
And that's the lion-tailed macaque.
I'm Steve Backshall.
Oh, not the ear.
And I'm Gordon Buchanan.
Oh, look at that.
We may have spent a lot more time on home turf lately. But it's given us a chance to reflect on just how amazing some of those wild encounters were. And we want to share some of those memories with you.
Go.
The close encounters. Grueling expeditions.
Oh, I don't believe it.
The amazing discoveries.
Thank you.
And career-defining moments.
I just asked a wild bear for a kiss.
We'll also hear from those behind the cameras, just what it takes to capture the natural world in all its wonder. Join us as we look back on our travels across one of Earth's most magical continents, Africa.
If you had been on the main streets of Tobermory on the Isle of Mull in mid-1989, you might have heard some old ladies saying something like, "Oh, I hear that Gordon Buchanan's off to Africa." Africa was where it all started for me. I was still at school, I was 17, and I got offered the job of being the assistant to a wildlife cameraman. I packed in school and off I went, and looking back at the photographs of that time, I was still a kid. I was still a baby. I didn't know anything about the world. I didn't really know that much about myself.
Oh, Anna.
It was the first time that I'd been away from home, first time that I'd been to a foreign country. Those extraordinary experiences in Africa that sort of shaped me. I went from being a boy to being a man in that year.
Africa holds a really special place in my heart. But those early experiences could never have prepared me for my most memorable trip there. When I came closer to lions, despite the dangers, I'd always dreamt of sharing the lions' world, meeting them face to face, on foot, outside the confines of a big metal jeep.
There's no way that I could have gone out to Botswana, out to the Kalahari, and come back in one piece. I needed help.
Thrive among wild lions and be brave enough to approach them on foot. Because I was then going to be stealing meat from a lion to feed the villagers. Something the Sand People have been doing for thousands of years.
So there's going to
When I think of Africa, and Kenya in particular, it's the dawn and the sunrise and the sounds of all the animals waking up. You're often alone at that time of day, so it's extremely peaceful. It's such a magical place. It really is my Eden. I'm a wildlife camera woman. I've been in the industry for over 15 years. From as early as I can remember, I wanted to work with wildlife. And if anyone asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I'd say zookeeper. And that, coupled with loving being outside and my parents having lots of paintings on the walls of a place called Malawi, which is where they used to live before I was born, it really got my interest in all things overseas and exotic. And when I was 7 years old, one Christmas, I was bought my first camera. This very basic 110 film camera started me on the journey of photography. I used to line all my teddy bears up outside the house and take pictures. And I suppose that's really the start of my wildlife camera journey. I've had the chance to film in some amazing places, not least Kenya, where I had the lovely experience of filming a baby elephant just a few days old called Safina. Now, it's a race for survival for these baby elephants, and they've got to keep up with a herd that travels 15 kilometers a day, which means I've got to keep up with that herd as well. And sometimes we ran into some problems. This was quite an eventful day. We got stuck trying to cross the river, trying to follow our herd. And Sammy, our driver and spotter, never really gets stuck. He can normally get the car out of any situation. So when he couldn't this time, we did start to panic slightly. We all had to get out of the vehicle. He had to roll his sleeves up, roll his trousers up, get the shovel in and try and dislodge the wheel where it got caught. So our panic was rising and rising. I think we were only stuck for about an hour or so, but it really did feel like an eternity. Mostly we were worried about losing our elephants because even though they're big animals, they can just disappear off into the bush so easily. Just as our vehicles can get caught in the mud, it's quite tricky for baby elephants as well. I know some people can frown at anthropomorphizing, but assigning human attributes to animals, I think, is a great way of connecting with them. And if it allows an audience more of a connection, then I'm all for it. I learned a lot about elephant behavior filming Safina. I mean, I always knew they were intelligent emotionally, but to actually see that in the flesh, that almost palpable emotion, it really does show how intelligent these animals are.
We are literally surrounded by elephants. I mean, that's very close.
You hear that?
Then, all of a sudden, another herd of elephants emerged from the scrub. We've got our herd that's come down from the mountain. And we've got another herd here, and they're calling to each other. And this other herd has an elephant called Monsoon in it, who's Cyclone's sister.
Yeah, they're sisters.
And
See,
look, they're getting so excited.
I think there will be something that will happen. Something really interesting.
Lovely, lovely.
I think, guys, we should be ready. There will be
This is gorgeous. We've got Cyclone calling with her little baby underneath. It's thought that these intricate displays of communication teach the youngsters to memorize smells and sounds to recognize their family and friends in the future.
You know, they really look like they're happy to see each other. And it's proper greetings. It's like, you know, the hug. When coming home from a long stint away and meeting them at the airport or something, and you can't wait to wrap your arms around them. Sort of this tangible emotion.
The Okavango Delta is one of the miracles of nature. A temporary river which gives life to a huge section of southern Africa and turns it from desert into oasis. below the surface, it's one of the most atmospheric environments on planet Earth. And then you'll just see glowing in the darkness the white of the teeth of a giant crocodile. There is nothing on this planet that's more like seeing a dragon in its lair than seeing a croc on the bottom of the Okavango. This is home for me, on the banks of the Thames. I've been working in expeditions and natural history for nearly 25 years now, and it's a life that's been very, very good to me. When I was a kid, what I wanted more than anything in the world was to work in an African wildlife park as a guide. And now, having spent my entire adult life working with and filming wildlife, I still, every time I go back to Africa, see something new and still have that same sense of excitement. And my closest calls with animals have all been in Africa too. Led us to believe that it was an acceptable risk and that it could be done at that time of year relatively safely. But it turns out we were wrong. I got what I would probably say is the finest shot I've ever got in natural history of this croc swimming up above me. Retrospectively, I think that is the closest that I've ever come to something very serious happening with an animal. And we were really, really lucky to get away with it. I can remember looking over my shoulder and seeing this explosion of sand on the bottom. King, I'm gonna have to go to his partner and his kids and tell them that their dad's not coming home. And I don't ever want to go through that again. And we all knew that we got off lightly. The guys that I was with, who were the experts at croc diving, they stopped then and there, have never done it since. I think now, particularly now that I have 3 young kids, my attitude to risk is always changing. So I'll still do things that may appear to be completely out there, but they're done from a perspective of just trying to make sure that we're not taking too much of a risk, because ultimately life is just way too precious to risk losing.
What's that one there? Can you see that one? Can you see that one?
Roots. I mean, the Congo is one of the most unspoiled wildlife destination not only in Africa, but perhaps the world. Being able to share that beautiful landscape and diversity of wildlife to the world was, for me, an exciting thing ever. And I can remember I was buzzing about the idea of traveling with my team, but at the same time, I was quite anxious, worrying that I might not deliver. I mean, this is my birthland. I just sort of felt the sense of responsibility. And then, if you are connected to nature, nature gives you somehow those glorious moments. And it worked out at the end. I mean, if anyone could deliver such a thing in the Congo, it has to be me. Now, Western lowland gorillas, they're obviously on every cameraman dream list. But growing up in the Congo, my grandmother, she was absolutely terrified by the prospect of just talking about gorillas. And she thought gorillas was some sort of monster, King Kong, who would destroy everything. She's never seen any gorillas. I mean, I can imagine this sort of cultural superstitious, but imagine me telling her, grandmother, I'm going to go and film Western lowland gorillas close up. My dad calling me and congratulating me and saying how impressed he was. But I tell you what, my dad is a hard one to impress. And my brothers, they also called me and they were like, next time you're going to film those gorillas, we would like to tag along and see with our naked eyes. And that's one thing, you know, a lot of Congolese people would never imagine seeing themselves, you know, being in that sort of position. And I feel blessed and I feel so fortunate. And I never took that for granted, you know.
The smell of the African savanna. Well, it's undoubtedly, and it's dewy. It can smell then like a fresh, ripe salad. Of course, things heat up, and by midday, everything is parched. Then it smells more straw-like, a rich, aromatic, heady straw smell. And of course, it's reflected in the smell of the produce of the animals that eat it. I'm talking about dung. I'm talking about great big piles of dung. You won't believe it, but looking at this muddle, I can tell you I don't like clutter. I mean, I absolutely hate clutter. I grew up in a house which my mother filled with ornaments, and I absolutely detested it. And what I do is I try to get all of my clutter in one place in the office, so that there's very little other clutter around the place. But I do quite like some of it. This is a knobkerrie that I picked up in Kenya. A careless Maasai dropped it. He lost it. It became my prize. So I can't resist keeping that. And there's all sorts of other things from around the world that I've collected throughout my life. But these little trinkets are not at the core of my collection. You see, we naturalists like to pick things up that we find, analyse them. They excite our curiosity. So I've got a very large collection of skulls, more than 200, maybe 225 different species of skull, an extensive feather collection from birds from all over the world. Lots of pellets too, but also, perhaps slightly unusually, a collection of animal poo. I thought I'd show you some of my prizes. This is unprepared and fresh, so I'm not going to take the lid off this. This is brown bear poo, but I'm going to show you something that's really exciting to me in here. And again, it's relatively recent, so I haven't packaged it properly yet, but see if you can guess what this is. Brought home in a shower cap there. Look at that. So it's got a little twist on the end. It's quite dark. It's full of fur that you can see, so clearly it's a predatory animal. This is the poo of a snow leopard. Fantastic, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Some more domestic poo here. I got this last year. This is a little tub of Serotine bat poo. It's got a great smell. Oh, it smells just like a bat roost. Oh, yes. Unique, absolutely unique. Hey, what about this? Look, this is good. I got this in my garden last year. These tiny pellets in here were produced by a mullein moth caterpillar. You're probably thinking, surely this bloke's got better things to do. But look, I'm going to go to the ultimate prize in my poo collection. This is another great piece of excrement. Full of grass, another herbivore, big, round. This is the poo of a white rhino. Yes! Rhino poo in my hands. I just like the way that it connects me with that animal. Now, it may not be the sort of thing that you would keep on your sideboard, but I've got to tell you that collecting this Now, it looked a lot more precarious than it actually was, because just out of shot on the left or right-hand side, there was a vehicle parked that I could bolt to if the rhinos got too close. And the reason that the vehicle was there is that I learned long ago never to trust the cameraman to tell you if the animal is getting too close. Obviously, he or she can see you and the animal, you can only see the camera, but they're so preoccupied with what they're doing that they just forget about your safety. So the vehicle was in place. And this was a lesson I'd learned to my cost in Nakuru National Park, again in Africa, when I'd asked the cameraman to watch my back, quite literally, when I was surrounded by a troop of large baboons, very large male baboons. The battery went flat on the camera, and he started to change that, and instinctively I looked around to find myself confronted by an enormous male baboon going berserk. I mean, it was this far away from me, massive mouth, huge canines, braying and howling at me. And again, I acted instinctively, and I put my hands in the air. I made myself as big as possible, and I screamed at the top of my voice. I can't tell you what I screamed, it was unbroadcastable. Just to show this animal that I wasn't intimidated by it. But I clearly had been intimidated by it, because when it finally backed down and I sighed an enormous sigh of relief, I smelt something that I'd never smelled before, something that I'd produced during that encounter. Now, it wasn't a brown smell, it was the smell of my sweat. And I think it was probably the smell of fear. Never trust the cameraman. Not to cover your back when you've got an animal behind you.
The thing for me about Botswana is it seems to have a different energy. When you first arrive there, it's just this arid, cracked earth. And then in the distance, I have been so incredibly lucky to travel in the middle of nowhere, working with scientists who have taught me so much about how to protect the natural world. And yet, weirdly enough, I'm based in London. So, yeah, when I come home, it's quite the culture shock. And I remember the first time I worked in Botswana. We were there for about 5 weeks, and we arrived back home, landed in Heathrow. It was something like 5 in the morning, and throngs of people were crowding onto the transfer train. And I was there smushed between all these people who weren't looking at each other, who had like very sort of strong, angry looks on their faces, almost sort of like aggressive. There was an aggressive energy on the train. My eyes welled up a little bit. I felt really emotional about it and sad to be home. And it really upset me. It's very hard to put into words what it's like to be somewhere so vast and wild. I just got tingles just thinking about it. When people ask me, what is the one thing you need when you travel? I always say a notebook and a pencil. We're very lucky. We have a program to show us our memories, but there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes that really warms the cockles when you read it back, including things like I love getting stuck into. Most of the individuals would come to very quickly after another shot and sort of stagger, slightly wobbly on their legs, back to the herd. The herd would be all around, very calm, just looking at their family member. But there was one individual he was a male, and he came to, and he bolted straight at me. There are many things that I don't tell my parents about, and that was one of them.
The satellite collars allow...
You've got predators waiting the entire journey, and we did spot some young zebra with horrendous marks on their flanks, clearly from lion attacks. I decided not to take any photographs. And we sat there in absolute silence. We looked at each other, tears in our eyes, couldn't speak to each other, knowing full well that we'd experienced this magnificent wildlife scene. And it stays here, it stays in your heart, it stays in your mind. Those are the types of experiences that have changed me forever.
Next time.
If you could suffer landscape culture shock, then I'm in it.
We'll be looking back on our wild journeys across the frozen north.
Oh my goodness, look at that!
Oh, you beauty two pups.
Arctic regions where nature operates at extremes. And only the strongest survive.
Yeah, things get cold next Sunday. Next night, we're expecting a hurricane. Dangerous, exciting, and with a short fuse. We spend 2 hours with our first god of snooker, Alex Higgins.